I sold my company for $43 million. I was hoping to celebrate the milestone with my daughter and her husband at the most beautiful restaurant in Chicago, but as they swayed together on the dance floor, a security guard leaned in and whispered, "Your son-in-law put something in your iced tea." In that instant, my world collapsed. Betrayal from my only child, my own flesh and blood. I stood up from the table and walked out. 20 minutes later, their karma began to unfold. "Mom, you're destroying our family's future." Clara's voice was sharp, cutting through the serene quiet of my lakefront condominium. I continued to stir her favorite old-fashioned, the sound of the large ice cube clinking methodically against the crystal glass. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the lights of Chicago twinkled like a fallen constellation. But any warmth I felt inside had long since vanished. "Clara, my mind is made up. I'm selling Innovate Solutions. The deal will close in a month." The words felt heavy in the air, like unshed tears. I had practiced saying them for weeks, but speaking them aloud still felt like a dream. 42 years of building, of innovating, of surviving, all boiled down to that one simple statement. My daughter stopped her frantic pacing, the color draining from her face. "Mom, you can't. This is our legacy." I held out the drink to her. Her hand shook just a little as she took it. "Our legacy?" The phrase tasted like ash in my mouth. "You don't even know the basics of our primary software." Liam, her husband, finally looked up from his tablet. He had been furiously tapping on it throughout our entire argument, feigning supportive note-taking, but I saw the calculating glint in his hazel eyes. "Eleanor, perhaps you should reconsider," he said, his voice smooth and coated in a layer of feigned concern. But I could hear the cold ambition beneath it. 3 years of watching him subtly manipulate my daughter had sharpened my senses to his tactics. I set my own glass down on the marble coaster with a deliberate final click. The sound seemed to hang in the silent room. "I've been considering this for 3 years. The decision is final." Clara started gesturing wildly, her arms flailing as if she were conducting a symphony of her own desperation. "But what about my role in the company? What about our lives? You're just going to throw away everything we've built?" "Everything I've built," I corrected her gently. The difference was critical. "You've been enjoying the salary." Liam's fingers flew across his tablet screen. Whatever he was documenting, it certainly wasn't a family memory. Clara slammed her glass onto the coffee table. Amber liquid sloshed onto my antique rug. "This is crazy. You're 65, Mom, not on your deathbed. You could lead this company for another decade." "I could," I agreed, "but I won't." The conviction in my own voice was a surprise, even to me. For months, I had been battling my own uncertainty, but tonight, all that doubt had burned away like fog in the morning Sunday. "I want to travel, Clara. I want to see the temples in Kyoto, wander the streets of Florence, and sit on a beach in Hawaii without having to check my email every 5 minutes. Then hire a CEO. Keep the company in the family," she pleaded. Her desperation was a tangible thing now. A sheen of sweat had appeared on her brow, despite the cool evening air. "And leave you two to interfere? To undermine every decision you don't agree with?" Liam stood up with a practiced grace, his tablet held against his chest like a shield. "Eleanor, I'm sure we can find a compromise. Clara has put in so much hard work." I nearly let out a bitter laugh. "Hard work?" Clara strolled into the office at 10, left by 4, and spent most of her afternoons at luncheons with potential clients who only tolerated her because of my name and reputation. "The decision is made, Liam. I'm meeting with Marcus Thorne tomorrow to finalize the terms of the sale." Clara's face turned a deep shade of crimson. She looked like a spoiled child, whose favorite toy had just been taken away. "Thorne? You're selling to Thorne Dynamics? They're our biggest rival. They're offering $43 million. All cash." The numbers seemed to shimmer in the air between us. 40? 3 million. Enough to live like a queen for the rest of my days. Clara sank into the plush armchair by the fireplace, burying her face in her hands. You're ruining everything, Mom. Absolutely everything. But I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in years. The immense weight of responsibility. The constant worrying. The endless task of managing Clara's professional shortcomings. It was all lifting from my shoulders like a set of broken chains. Liam moved to stand behind Clara's chair, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder, but his cold, calculating eyes never left my face. When exactly is the sale being finalized? He asked, his voice low. Next month. The preliminary paperwork has already been drafted. His grip on Clara's shoulder tightened, and for a fleeting second, I thought I saw a dangerous glint in his eyes, but it vanished so quickly I told myself I must have imagined it. The evening stretched on, thick with unspoken resentments and simmering tension. Outside, the city pulsed with energy and endless possibility. Inside my home, the air was heavy with the feeling of an ending. Clara lifted her head, and I saw a new expression in her eyes, no longer just desperate, but focused and calculating. Okay, wait, she said, standing up and beginning to pace around the coffee table in slow, deliberate steps. What if we brought in a new CEO? Or, you could make me a full partner. I remained seated, swirling the ice in my glass. Watching her grasp at straws was almost painful. Clara, you aren't ready to manage the marketing department, let alone the entire company. The unvarnished truth seemed to stun her. Her jaw tensed, but she kept pacing, kept thinking. Then train me. Give me 6 months. I'll show you what I can do. You've had 12 years to show me. Liam's pen scratched quickly across the surface of his tablet. Whatever scheme was taking shape in his mind, he was documenting it with great care. Clara stopped pacing and turned to face me directly. What if I bought you out? I could do it gradually, over time. With what money? Your allowance? Her face flushed with anger. But she didn't back down. I could find investors. Get loans from the bank. There has to be a way to keep this in the family. I set my glass down and leaned back into my chair. The soft leather was warm and comforting. I felt as if I were watching a play about someone else's life. Clara, you have over $20,000 in credit card debt. You're upside down on your car loan. What investor in their right mind would trust you with a $43 million company? The silence that followed was absolute. Even Liam stopped his incessant typing. Clara's shoulders slumped. All the fight seemed to drain out of her, like air from a punctured tire. All right, Mom, she said, her voice barely a whisper, completely defeated. If that's what you've decided, then I'll respect it. The words felt hollow, as if she'd rehearsed them, but I chose to believe her. That's my girl, I said softly. It's time for all of us to start new chapters. I stood and walked over to the bar, pouring myself a small scotch this time. The ice made a soft clinking sound as I dropped in 2 cubes. You'll be okay, Clara. Both of you will. The terms of the sale include generous severance packages for all employees. You'll have plenty of time to figure out what's next. Liam closed his tablet with a quiet click. Of course, Eleanor. We understand. But there was an edge to his tone that made me look at him more closely. He was smiling, but the smile was a mask that didn't quite reach his eyes. Clara moved to the window, gazing out at the city lights. Her reflection in the dark glass looked pale and ghost-like. 43 million, she murmured. That's a life-altering amount of money. It is, I confirmed. And I intend for it to alter my life completely. Travel, you said, Liam prompted. Kyoto. Florence. Among other places. I have a whole list, I said. I had actually begun compiling it 3 months prior. A list of countries I'd never had the chance to visit. Experiences I'd put on hold for decades while I was busy building my company. Liam stood and smoothed his trousers. Well, This has certainly been an eventful evening. Clara, my love, maybe we should be going. Let your mother get some rest. Clara nodded without turning away from the window. Yeah, that's a good idea. She walked over and gave me a stiff hug. Her arms felt cold, and her eyes were still distant. Congratulations, Mom. I truly hope you find everything you're looking for. Her words should have filled me with joy. Instead, they felt like a final goodbye, one that carried a weight I couldn't comprehend. Liam leaned in and kissed my cheek. His lips were cool against my skin. Take care of yourself, Eleanor. This is a huge step, the biggest of my life, I replied. They collected their things in silence. Clara's coat, Liam's briefcase, his mysterious tablet tucked securely inside. At the door, Clara turned back one last time. I love you, Mom. You know that, right? I love you too, sweetheart. The words were the truest I had ever spoken, which only made the situation that much more painful. After they were gone, I stood alone in my vast, silent living room, scotch in hand, watching the city breathe and pulse below me. Tomorrow, I had a meeting with Marcus Thorne. Tomorrow, I would begin the process of taking apart the empire I had built. And tonight, for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I felt a sense of peace. The grandfather clock in the hall chimed 9 times. The night was still young, but I felt ready for whatever was coming next. The next morning, the aroma of fresh coffee filled my home office as I sat surrounded by 4 decades of my life's work. Sunlight poured through the windows, illuminating the mahogany desk where I had made so many of the decisions that had defined my existence. My gaze fell on a framed photograph. It was me in 1983. A 23-year-old woman, standing in front of a cramped garage in Wicker Park, with a determined smile and a universe of dreams in my eyes. 1983. A tiny garage. $5,000 in savings. And a dream that felt bigger than the city itself. Who could have imagined that 40 years later, that dream would be valued at $43 million? I picked up the frame, studying the face of that young woman. She looked so confident, so hungry for success. She had no idea what was in store for her. The failures, the breakthroughs, the countless sleepless nights spent coding until her eyes felt raw. The first year was absolute hell. I launched 3 different software programs, and nobody wanted any of them. My bank account was shrinking by the day. Dinner was instant noodles more nights than not. My David, God rest his soul, worked double shifts as a paramedic, just to keep us afloat, while I chased what seemed like an impossible fantasy. But then, we had our breakthrough. I opened a desk drawer and pulled out another, more recent photograph. It was our first real office space, a basement in Logan Square, with flickering fluorescent lights and pipes that would drip every time it rained. That was where we created LedgerLink. Revolutionary might be overstating it. But for small businesses, it changed everything. It had a simple user interface, powerful capabilities, and was priced for companies that couldn't afford the massive corporate software suites. Our big break came when a local company, Peterson Manufacturing, called us in a panic. Their entire system had crashed, and they had lost 3 months of financial data. They were desperate and willing to give our little-known software a shot. $50,000. That was our first major contract. I remember just staring at that check, unable to believe it was real, until David had to gently take it from my hands and walk it to the bank himself. From that day forward, everything changed. Word of mouth spread like wildfire through the business community. LedgerLink became the go-to accounting software for small companies. We hired more programmers, added new features, and moved into bigger, better offices. By 1990, we had 20 employees. By 2000, we had more than 100. The days in the garage felt like they belonged to another lifetime. I took a sip of my coffee and looked at the wall where our very first check was framed. $500 from a restaurant owner on the South Side who needed help with his inventory. $500 to 43 million. It was the American dream, written in numbers. But that success had come at a price. 70-hour work weeks meant missing Clara's school plays and falling asleep at my desk more often than I could count. David was always so understanding, right up until the cancer took him 5 years ago. That's when the true weight of it all settled on my shoulders. I had built this empire for my family, only to realize that my family had been drifting away while I wasn't paying attention. Clara was never interested in the technical side of the business. She wanted the perks, the money, the status, the easy job without ever bothering to understand the foundation it was all built on. And Liam only made things worse. I'll never forget seeing him at their wedding reception, literally taking notes on his tablet about company assets during the toasts. I pulled up the latest financial reports. Innovate Solutions was strong, profitable, and still growing. We had clients in 37 states, and our software was running in thousands of businesses. But I was tired. A deep, soul-level kind of tired. My phone buzzed. It was Marcus Thorne's office, confirming our meeting for that afternoon. Miss Vance, Mr. Thorne is very much looking forward to discussing the acquisition details. As am I replied. $43 million. Enough to circle the globe twice. Enough to finally start living instead of just working. I stood and walked to the window. Lincoln Park stretched out below, a vibrant green oasis alive with the energy of spring. People were jogging, children were playing, couples were feeding ducks at the pond. Life was happening down there. Real life. Not just a series of conference calls and profit margins. Clara would be fine. She was bright enough, despite her laziness. And Liam would certainly make sure she landed on her feet. He had far too much invested in her to let her fail completely. In the clear morning light, the decision felt more right than ever. Selling my company wasn't a betrayal. It was my liberation. I finished my coffee and started gathering the documents I would need for the meeting: contracts, financial statements, asset valuations, the paper trail of a dream made real. In just a few hours, I would sit down across from Marcus Thorne and begin writing the final chapter of this story. The story of Innovate Solutions was coming to an end, but the story of Eleanor Vance was about to begin. That young woman from the Wicker Park garage was finally going to get a chance to rest. The afternoon sun streamed through my office windows, casting long, golden rectangles across the financial reports laid out on my desk. These numbers, which had once been the cause of so many sleepless nights, now seemed almost lyrical. Profit margins, growth rates, market share data, 40 years of my life, distilled into an empire. It was time to enjoy the rewards of all that labor. Kyoto, Paris, Tuscany. So many places I had only ever dreamed of seeing. I pulled out the large world map I kept on my wall and traced the routes I had imagined for decades. The cherry blossoms in Kyoto would be in full bloom this time of year. I could already picture myself walking through Ueno Park, visiting the ancient temples, and tasting authentic ramen from a street vendor. My laptop displayed the final quarterly report. Revenue was up 18%. Client retention was at 94%. And software downloads were exceeding projections by 30%. Innovate Solutions had become everything I had envisioned all those years ago in that dusty garage. But the numbers felt distant now, like achievements belonging to someone else. I opened my desk drawer and took out a new leather-bound journal. I was finally planning my travels, something I never had time for while I was building the company. Paris first, I murmured, my pen gliding across the page in careful script. The Louvre, Notre Dame, and all the little cafes David had always wanted to show me. David. He would have been so happy in this moment, seeing me finally step away from the desk that had consumed so much of our life together. He understood my drive, the need to build something that would last. But he also knew when it was time to let go. The Tuscany section of my travel guide was open beside my journal. I imagined the rolling hills, the sprawling vineyards, the stone cottages where time seemed to slow down to the pace of aging wine. A world away from the frantic speed of Chicago, I could rent a villa, learn to speak Italian, and finally write the memoir I had always promised myself I would. My phone buzzed. It was Marcus Thorne's assistant, confirming our final meeting for Wednesday. Just 2 more days to finalize everything. I closed my laptop with a satisfying click. The era of Innovate Solutions was drawing to a close. But the next chapter for Eleanor Vance was just beginning. I stood up and stretched, my muscles aching in a way that reminded me I was no longer 23, 65 years old, with perhaps 20 good years left. 20 years to truly live, not just work. My eyes landed on a photograph on my bookshelf. It was our first company Christmas party in 1987. 12 employees, including David, all huddled around a small plastic tree in our Logan Square basement office. Everyone looked so young, so full of hope. Now, we had over 200 employees in 4 different offices. The software we had created was the backbone of thousands of businesses, small restaurants, doctors' offices, construction firms, all relying on the code I had written in that cramped basement. They would be fine after the transition. Marcus Thorne understood technology, and more importantly, he respected good people. The company would continue to thrive under the umbrella of Thorne Dynamics. I walked to the window overlooking Lincoln Park. Joggers moved along the winding paths. Couples sat on benches, and children's laughter floated up from the playgrounds. Life was unfolding at a human pace. Tomorrow, I would review the final contracts. On Wednesday, I would shake Marcus's hand and sign the papers that would change my entire world. By next week, I would be free. The travel brochures scattered on my desk were a vibrant tapestry of future adventures. Buddhist temples in Kyoto, wine tastings in Bordeaux, art galleries in Florence, museums in Prague, all of it was finally within my reach. It was all possible because I had built something worth selling. My journal was quickly filling up with itineraries, hotel ideas, and flight schedules. I planned for 6 months of travel to start, but maybe it would be longer if the urge to explore took hold. For the first time in decades, I had no deadlines to meet other than the ones I set for myself. There were no employees depending on my decisions. No quarterly reports demanding my attention. Just an old woman with new dreams and more than enough money to chase them to any corner of the earth. The grandfather clock chimed 4 o'clock. Wednesday couldn't arrive soon enough. The Innovate Solutions conference room felt different that Wednesday afternoon. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the polished mahogany table, where I had made countless decisions over the years. Marcus Thorne arrived at precisely 2 o'clock. His handshake was firm, his confidence radiating. Everything about him screamed competence. His silver hair was perfectly styled, his navy suit was impeccably tailored, and his sharp eyes missed nothing. "Eleanor, your company is precisely the asset Thorne Dynamics needs for our next phase of expansion," he said, his voice carrying the calm authority of a man used to making multi-million-dollar decisions. "I appreciate your directness, Marcus. I'm glad to know Innovate Solutions will be in capable hands." We settled into the large leather chairs while my assistant served coffee. It was the familiar ritual of a corporate negotiation. Yet this time, the stakes were deeply personal. Marcus opened his briefcase and laid out a series of thick folders. Contract drafts, financial projections, transition plans, the documents that would officially transform my life's work into numbers on a balance sheet. "Your software architecture is truly impressive," he noted. "The code is clean, the design is scalable, and the documentation is excellent." He had clearly done his research, and I respected him for it. That's the result of 40 years of refinement, I replied. We've learned from every single mistake. It certainly shows. Your client retention rates are outstanding. The conversation flowed easily between us. Two professionals speaking the same language. There was no posturing, no games, just two business leaders arriving at a mutually beneficial agreement. I presented the portfolios I had prepared. Client testimonials, growth projections, technical specifications, everything meticulously organized with the same precision that had defined my company's reputation. Your team is exceptionally talented, Marcus observed as he reviewed the employee profiles. We intend to retain most of them. They're good people, I said. They deserve that stability. 43 million is a very fair price for an asset of this caliber. The number still felt unreal. $43 million more money than I could possibly spend in several lifetimes. It's generous, but it's fair. You're acquiring proven technology and a portfolio of loyal clients. Marcus smiled. The kind of smile that seals deals. It's a deal. We'll have the official paperwork drawn up for next week. We shook hands across the vast table. The gesture felt monumental, like signing a peace treaty after a long and hard-fought war. My assistant appeared with a bottle of champagne, a Dom Perignon 2015, that I had been saving for a truly special occasion. The cork popped with a sound of pure celebration. To new beginnings, Marcus said, raising his glass. To successful partnerships, I replied. The champagne tasted like victory, crisp, clean, with a complexity that lingered on the tongue. It reminded me of a good business relationship. We spent another hour going over the finer details of the transition. Employee contracts, client communications, the transfer of technical documents, the intricate logistics of deconstructing 40 years of careful work. But it felt right. Natural. It was like watching a child finally leave home, a little painful, but entirely necessary. Your daughter will be provided for during the transition, Marcus stated. It was a professional courtesy, not a personal inquiry. Clara will receive the same generous severance package as all the other employees, I said firmly. It's time for her to make her own way. Fair enough. Independence is a great builder of character. His words held the weight of earned wisdom. Marcus clearly understood the delicate balance between family loyalty and business pragmatism. By 4 o'clock, we had covered every point. The preliminary agreement was signed, the timeline was set, and all expectations were clear. The following Wednesday would bring the final signatures and the wire transfer. Eleanor, it has been a pleasure. You've built something truly remarkable here. Thank you, Marcus. I have no doubt you'll take it to even greater heights. After he left, I remained in the empty conference room, gazing out at the bustling Chicago streets below. People hurried along the sidewalks, chasing their own deadlines and dreams. Soon I would be one of them. Not as a CEO, but as someone with the time to simply notice the world beyond profit margins. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Clara. She probably wanted an update on the sale. For once, I had genuinely good news to share. The champagne had left me feeling expansive and optimistic, even about the family relationships that had been so strained lately. Maybe this new chapter would be a chance for us to grow closer. The signed contracts were spread across my penthouse coffee table like declarations of victory. Final sale agreements, wire transfer confirmations, corporate dissolution papers, the complete and official dismantlement of my life's work. I poured myself a celebratory scotch and picked up my phone. It was time to share the news with my family. Clara answered on the second ring. Mom, how did the meeting go? Her voice was unusually energetic, almost buzzing with excitement. Clara, it's official. The company is sold. Let's go out and celebrate tonight. My treat, at Aria. The words felt strange coming out of my mouth. 42 years of my life, suddenly spoken of in the past tense. Congratulations, Mom. Liam will be so thrilled. What time should we be there? The eagerness in her tone brought a smile to my face. Perhaps she was finally coming to terms with the change. 8 o'clock. I'll get us a table on the terrace with a view of the park. We'll be there. And Mom, I'm so proud of you. The unexpected warmth in her voice touched a place deep inside me. When was the last time she had said those words? Thank you, sweetheart. That means the world to me. After we hung up, I called the concierge. Antonio, I need a reservation at Aria for this evening. Something very special. Terrace seating, with a park view if possible. Congratulations on your great success, Miss Vance. I will arrange for the perfect table. Antonio had been the manager of this building for 15 years. He knew when to ask questions and when to simply get things done. The shower felt like a baptism, the hot water washing away years of accumulated corporate stress. I dressed with care. A navy Chanel suit, a silk blouse, and my favorite Italian leather heels. Tonight was an occasion that demanded elegance. My reflection in the mirror showed a woman transformed. I was still 65, still marked by the lines of decades of responsibility. But I felt lighter, as if a great weight had been lifted. The scotch had made me feel philosophical. How many celebrations had I missed while I was building Innovate Solutions? Birthday dinners cut short for client emergencies. Anniversary trips canceled for product launches. I had traded time for money, and now I was trading that money back for time. David would have appreciated the irony. I selected a vintage watch from my jewelry box. A Patek Philippe I had bought to commemorate our first $1 million year, but had never actually worn. Tonight seemed like the right time for dormant luxuries. The evening stretched before me, full of promise. Good food, fine wine, and a family conversation that wouldn't be overshadowed by business obligations. Outside my windows, Lincoln Park was bathed in the soft glow of twilight. Couples strolled hand in hand along the tree-lined paths. Children's laughter echoed from the playgrounds as their parents watched from nearby benches. It was normal life, the kind I had often observed but rarely been a part of. My phone buzzed with a text from Antonio. Your table at Aria is confirmed. Prime Terrace location, 8:00 p.m. Champagne service has been arranged. Perfect. Clara and Liam deserved a proper celebration. Despite our recent friction, they were family. The only family I had left. I adjusted my suit jacket and checked the time. 7:15. Enough time to take a leisurely walk through the park and arrive perfectly on time. The contracts on my coffee table caught my eye one last time, legal documents that severed a connection 40 years in the making. Tomorrow, I would wake up a retired woman, with no company to run, no employees to worry about, no quarterly reports demanding my attention, just Eleanor Vance, with more money than she knew what to do with. And finally, enough time to remember who she was, before the business consumed her. The night air would be crisp, ideal for a celebratory dinner. Fine Italian food, excellent wine, and conversation about the future, not about corporate duties. I grabbed my keys and headed for the elevator, feeling more buoyant than I had in years. Tonight, we would raise a glass to new beginnings. The entrance to Aria glowed with a warm, inviting light as I walked up through the evening shadows of Lincoln Park. Clara and Liam were already waiting under the restaurant's elegant awning, their silhouettes framed by the soft light of Italian lanterns strung along the terrace. Mom! Clara's embrace was surprisingly genuine, almost desperate. Liam kissed me on both cheeks, his smile perfectly polished. Eleanor, you look radiant. Success suits you. The hostess guided us through the bustling main dining room to our reserved table on the terrace. The Chicago skyline glittered below us like a sea of scattered diamonds, with Lincoln Park stretching out like an endless expanse of darkness. To a new life and new adventures, I said, raising my wine glass, feeling a profound sense of lightness. To you, Mom. You deserve all the happiness in the world, Clara replied, her voice tinged with an emotion I couldn't quite place. I chalked it up to excitement. We clinked our glasses together under the string lights that danced in the gentle evening breeze. The sound was pure and celebratory. Liam ordered for the table osso buco, risotto, Caesar salads. Everything felt flawless, perfectly orchestrated, like a scene from a film about a happy family celebrating a great triumph. Eleanor, you have to tell us all about your travel plans, Liam said, leaning forward with an air of genuine interest. Kyoto. First, I've always dreamed of seeing the cherry blossoms. The words themselves painted vivid pictures in my mind. Ancient temples framed by delicate pink petals, serene gardens where time moved at the pace of nature, not a business quarter. When David was alive, we used to talk about visiting Kyoto. Every spring, he would show me pictures of the philosopher's path, of the way the sunlight filtered through the blooming branches. Clara fidgeted with her napkin, glancing at her watch for the third time. That sounds amazing, Mom. How long do you think you'll be gone? 6 weeks at least. Maybe longer, if the spirit of adventure takes hold. A jazz quartet started to play near the bar, their smooth melodies drifting across the terrace like smoke. On the small dance floor, couples swayed together, lost in the music and in each other's arms. Liam touched Clara's hand. Darling, shall we dance? I love this song. Clara hesitated, her eyes darting between him and me. Go on, I encouraged them. I'll enjoy watching you two. It feels like ages since I've seen you dance. They rose from the table and moved towards the music. Clara's hand trembled slightly as Liam placed it on her waist. I leaned back in my chair, sipping my wine and watching them move in slow, graceful circles. The evening felt enchanted, suspended in a perfect moment between a lifetime of achievement and a future full of possibility. A man in a dark suit stood discreetly near the terrace railing, his eyes methodically scanning the restaurant. Security, I assumed. High-end places like this always had unobtrusive protection. The music swelled, the mournful notes of a saxophone weaving through the melody of the violins. A sound that spoke of romance and fresh starts. Clara and Liam looked beautiful together, young and elegant against the glittering backdrop of the city. This, I thought, is what success is all about. Not the numbers in a bank account or the industry accolades, but moments like this family, together, celebrating life's triumphs, surrounded by beauty. My glass of iced tea sat half-finished beside my wine, the ice cubes slowly melting in the warm night air. The atmosphere of the restaurant was a comforting embrace, soft lighting, the gentle hum of conversation, the subtle clinking of silverware against fine china. The other diners spoke in hushed tones, their voices blending into a sophisticated murmur of contentment and prosperity. Tomorrow, I would start planning the Japan trip in earnest. Travel guides, hotel reservations, cultural research, the same meticulous preparation that had made Innovate Solutions a success would now be dedicated to leisure instead of business. Liam spun Clara slowly, her dress flowing around her like water. They looked happy, content, and ready to start building their own lives without relying on my company for their security. Perhaps this transition would bring us closer, with no more business tensions or worries about inherited responsibilities. We could just be a family, enjoying each other's company, without the weight of corporate obligations. The security guard shifted his position, turning to face our table more directly. His focus seemed unusually intense, as if he had noticed something I couldn't see. But nothing could spoil my mood tonight. $43 million, 42 years of hard work, and finally, the freedom to truly live instead of just achieve. The jazz quartet's melody softened as Clara and Liam continued their slow dance, their movements almost hypnotic under the soft terrace lights. I watched them with a surge of maternal pride, remembering a time when Clara had been too shy to even ask a boy to dance at her school formals. A shadow fell over my table. "Excuse the interruption, ma'am. My name is Frank. I'm with security for the restaurant." I looked up to see the man in the dark suit standing beside my chair. His expression was professional, yet deeply troubled. "Yes? What is it? I saw that young man with you. When you were distracted, he poured something from a small vial into your iced tea." The words were like a physical blow. I stared at him, convinced I must have heard him wrong. "What? Are you sure? That's my son-in-law?" Frank's face remained grim, his voice low and steady. "I'm certain, ma'am. Please, be careful." My eyes shot to the glass of iced tea. It looked so innocent, just an amber liquid with melting ice. The very glass I was about to drink from when Clara and Liam returned to the table. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The sounds of the restaurant became muffled and distant. You're absolutely sure?" "I watched him do it, ma'am." "You were looking at the musicians." He took a small container from his pocket and added something to your drink. "Liam, my daughter's husband. The man I had welcomed into my family." "Ma'am, are you all right?" Frank's voice seemed to be coming from a great distance. I looked out at the dance floor where Liam was holding Clara close, his back to our table. They moved together with a practiced ease, completely unaware that their monstrous plan had been witnessed. My own daughter had conspired to have me killed. The realization hit me in sickening waves. The forced smiles, Liam's calculated questions, Clara's nervous energy that I had mistaken for excitement. They had planned this, likely for weeks. "Ma'am?" I forced myself to meet Frank's concerned gaze. "Thank you." "What? What do I do?" "Do not drink anything else from that glass. Would you like me to call the police?" "The police?" "My daughter and son-in-law arrested for attempted murder. The headlines in the business journals. The public disgrace for our entire family." "No," I whispered. "Not yet. I need a moment to think." Frank nodded in understanding. "I'll be watching from over there. Just give me a signal if you need anything." He moved back to his post by the railing, but I could feel his eyes fixed on our table. My mind was racing. A confrontation here would cause a public spectacle, leading to police and media involvement. Everything I had spent a lifetime building would be destroyed by the scandal. But to do nothing was to accept that my child had tried to murder me. The music ended. Clara and Liam started walking back to the table, their faces flushed and smiling from the dance. Time seemed to crawl. I had maybe 30 seconds to decide what to do. "Think," I told myself. "Think like the woman who built a $43 million company from nothing." I needed proof. I couldn't make an accusation of this magnitude without irrefutable evidence. My hands started to move towards the iced tea, then stopped. Frank was right. I couldn't drink it, but I could preserve it. In my purse, I carried a small vial of migraine medication, something I'd had for years but rarely used. I could transfer some of the tea into it, save the proof of what Liam had done. My fingers worked quickly, unscrewing the tiny cap, all while keeping my eyes on the approaching couple. "Did you enjoy the dance?" Clara called out as they got closer. "It was beautiful," I managed to say, my voice surprisingly steady. 20 seconds. I dipped the vial into the glass, filling it with the poison tea. Evidence of their betrayal, now contained in a small plastic bottle. I screwed the cap back on and slipped it into my pocket. 15 seconds. Now, what to do with the rest of the tea? The large decorative fern beside our table gave me the answer. With a casual movement, I poured the remaining contents of the glass into the pot, as if I were absent-mindedly watering the plant. 10 seconds. Clara and Liam arrived at the table. "We should do this more often," Liam said, pulling out Clara's chair for her. His hands were perfectly steady now. The tremor was gone, as was the nervous energy. Whatever he had put in my drink, He believed the deed was done. Liam slid into his own chair, his face glowing with a look of satisfaction from their dance. Clara arranged her dress meticulously, and both of them watched me with expectant smiles. My own daughter, I thought. How could I have been so blind? But now, I finally see the truth. That was lovely, I said, my voice eerily calm. You two danced so beautifully together. The iced tea glass sat empty in front of me, its deadly contents now seeping into the soil of the restaurant's fern. In my pocket, the small vial felt as heavy as a stone. Where's your tea, Mom? Clara's question was casual, but I detected a subtle undertone. Anxious anticipation, perhaps. Oh, I finished it while I was watching you two dance. All this celebrating is thirsty work. His smile wavered, just for a fraction of a second. But I saw it. Should we get some dessert? Liam's voice was unnaturally bright. I stood up, reaching for my purse. Actually, I think I'm going to call it a night. It's been a long day, you know. That final paperwork was exhausting. The expressions on both of their faces shifted from feigned joy to confusion, and then to something sharper. But, Mom, we just got here. A rain check, I said. I placed $300 on the table. More than enough to cover the bill and a generous tip. Tonight was perfect. Thank you both. I leaned in and kissed Clara's cheek, then embraced Liam, my arms feeling heavy and disconnected from my body. I love you both, I said. And the words were filled with a meaning they could never comprehend. Mom, wait, Clara said, starting to get up. Stay, I insisted. Finish your wine. Enjoy the music. I can get a taxi home. I turned and walked away from the table with deliberate, steady steps. Feeling their stunned gazes on my back, the weight of $43 million was nothing compared to the crushing weight of their betrayal. Frank appeared at my side as I reached the restaurant's interior. Smart move with the plant, he said quietly. You preserved the evidence and eliminated the threat. Thank you, I said, my voice thick with emotion. You saved my life tonight. Just doing my job. Will you be all right to get home? I'll be fine. The night air felt different as I stepped out onto the sidewalk. It was cooler, sharper, as if I were breathing in a new world where nothing was what it seemed. Behind me, through the large windows of the restaurant, I could see Clara and Liam at our table. They were leaning in close to each other, their heads bent in an intense conversation, the relaxed facade of a few minutes ago completely shattered. They were likely planning their next move, trying to understand my sudden departure. I walked through Lincoln Park, my footsteps echoing on the empty pathways. A few late-night joggers passed me, their breath visible in the cooling air. The vial in my pocket contained much more than iced tea. It held the proof that the daughter I had raised, educated, and supported had conspired to murder me for money. $43 million was, apparently, a price worth killing for, but they had failed. And now, I knew exactly who they were beneath the smiles and the hollow declarations of love. The grand apartment buildings along Michigan Avenue rose up like monuments to success and deceit. Lights twinkled in the windows of 1,000 homes where families were living normal lives. Lives that didn't involve attempted murder over dinner. My condominium was just ahead, both a sanctuary and a prison. I would be safe from physical harm, but I was now trapped with the knowledge that would change my life forever. Tomorrow, I would decide what to do with the proof I carried, but tonight, I would simply try to survive the shock of learning that the bonds of blood meant nothing when a fortune was at stake. The decorative fern at the restaurant would be withered and dead within days, proving the tea had been poisoned. Frank would remember what he saw, and the vial in my pocket would provide the final, damning laboratory confirmation. I had everything I needed to destroy the daughter who had tried to destroy me. But first, I had to understand how a mother becomes her child's enemy. The answer, I suspected, was that I had always been seen as an obstacle. Tonight had just been the final, horrifying reveal of a truth that had been there all along. The lights of Chicago blurred past the taxi window. I sat numbly in the back seat, the small vial a heavy, menacing presence in my jacket pocket. The driver was humming along to a jazz station on the radio, completely oblivious to the fact that his passenger had just narrowly escaped being murdered. My phone buzzed, and Clara's name lit up the screen. I stared at it for 3 long rings before I finally answered. "Mom? Where are you? We came back to the table, and you were just gone." Her voice was a perfect performance of concern, but I could hear something else hiding beneath it. Eagerness, maybe. Hope. "I'm sorry, Clara. I suddenly felt very ill. I went home." "Oh." There was a pause. Then, "I hope it's not anything serious." That tone, it was like a splash of ice water. It was joy. A barely concealed excitement disguised as worry. My own daughter was hoping that I was dying. "Don't you worry. I'm sure I'll be good as new by tomorrow." "Are you sure? Maybe you should go to the emergency room. You left in such a hurry." She was fishing, trying to find out if the poison had taken effect. Every word was dripping with false care, while her true emotions were seeping through the cracks. "I'm just tired, sweetheart. It was a long day with all that final paperwork." "Oh, right, the sale. Well, get some rest, Mom. Feel better." The line went dead. No, "I love you." No real concern at all. Just a palpable sense of relief that her mother might be on the verge of death. I slid the phone back into my pocket and leaned my head against the taxi's worn leather seat. $43 million. That's what my life was worth to them. The doorman at my building greeted me with his usual professional courtesy, but his words barely registered. Everything felt distant and muffled, as if I were experiencing the world through a thick pane of glass. The elevator ascended silently to the penthouse, carrying me up and away from a world where daughters didn't try to poison their mothers, a world where family meant something more than calculating an inheritance. Inside my apartment, I locked the front door with an uncharacteristic amount of care, sliding 3 deadbolts into place that I had never once used before tonight. I took the vial out of my pocket. It looked like evidence from a crime scene. Under the bright light of my desk lamp, the brownish liquid looked harmless. Vitamin C and attempted murder, all mixed together. I placed it carefully inside my safe, next to my insurance policies and stock certificates. It was evidence of a betrayal far more valuable than any financial document I had ever owned. The large leather chair in my study felt like an old friend as I sank into it. This morning, I had been sitting in this very spot, dreaming of exotic travel and a peaceful retirement. Tonight, I was planning. What? Exactly. Justice? Or was it just survival? The phone rang again. This time, I let it go to voicemail. Clara's voice, syrupy sweet, filled the silent room. "Mom, I'm getting really worried about you. Please call me back. Okay? Liam sends his love." Liam sends his love. The man who had tried to murder me was sending his love. I poured myself 3 fingers of scotch and stood at the window, looking out over the vast darkness of Lincoln Park. Somewhere down there, in a restaurant I would never again enter as an innocent woman, a beautiful fern was slowly dying from the poison that had been meant for me. Tomorrow, I would need to find a private laboratory, someone discreet who could analyze the sample and provide me with official documentation. Then, I would need a lawyer, someone who specialized in estate law and knew how to protect assets from murderous heirs. But tonight, I would just sit with the unbearable knowledge that my family had tried to kill me for my money. The scotch burned as it went down, but not nearly as much as the truth did. Outside, the city hummed with the sounds of normal life. People were having dinner, watching movies, calling their loved ones with genuine affection. It was a world where family bonds meant protection, not danger. My reflection in the dark window looked older. Somehow, the woman who had been celebrating her business success just a few hours ago had died at that restaurant table. Someone harder, colder, had taken her place. Someone who now understood that blood meant nothing when $43 million was on the table. The next morning brought a clarity that a sleepless night had refused to grant me. I dressed in my best suit, the navy one I reserved for the most important business meetings, and made 2 phone calls. The first was to Petrova Forensics, a discreet laboratory on the Upper East Side that handled sensitive testing for Chicago's elite. The second was to Arthur Vance, the estate attorney who had managed my business assets for decades. I need appointments with both of them today, I told my assistant. They are my top priority. Petrova Forensics was located on the 15th floor of a sleek medical building. Dr. Lena Petrova handled my consultation herself, and it was clear she understood that absolute discretion was essential. The sample will undergo a complete toxicological analysis, she explained, her voice both professional and reassuring. Gas chromatography, mass spectrometry, the full spectrum. I handed her the small vial that had saved my life. How long will the results take? You'll have preliminary findings in 24 hours. And the complete, legally admissible documentation in 48. Legal proceedings. The words hung in the air, heavy with consequence. This is completely confidential, of course. Absolutely, Miss Vance. Attorney. Client privilege extends to our work when legal action is being considered. The next day, I returned to her office to collect the results that would change the course of my life forever. The results are definitive, Miss Vance. We found a lethal dosage of potassium cyanide. Dr. Petrova's report was filled with graphs, chemical formulas, and expert analysis that painted a chillingly clear picture. My son-in-law, with my daughter's complicity, had tried to murder me with one of the deadliest poisons known to man. Will this document hold up in court? I asked. Without a doubt. This is an official expert analysis, complete with a fully documented chain of custody. I studied the technical details in the report. The concentration levels would have killed me within minutes. The purity of the substance suggested it had been procured from a professional source. Clear evidence of premeditation that went beyond any reasonable doubt. Arthur Vance's law office was a corner suite in a midtown skyscraper. The walls lined with legal books and photographs of smiling families that now seemed like a cruel mockery of trust. I need to change my will, I announced, wasting no time on pleasantries. Immediately. Arthur had been my lawyer for 15 years. He knew urgency when he heard it. What specific changes did you have in mind? Remove Clara and Liam as beneficiaries. I stated flatly. I want everything to go to charity. His eyebrows shot up. But he didn't ask a single question. His unwavering professional discretion was why the wealthiest families in the city entrusted him with their most private affairs. The Foundation for Medical Research, I decided. The one that funds research into the cancer that took David. They understand the value of a life. The new documents were drafted, notarized, and filed within a matter of hours. Clara and Liam would inherit nothing but the knowledge that their own greed had cost them everything. That evening, I called Arya. Antonio, this is Eleanor Vance. I'd like to make a reservation for tomorrow night. The same table on the terrace as Tuesday, if possible. Of course, Miss Vance. 8 o'clock? Perfect. And Antonio, could you do me a favor? Please ensure that the plant next to that table remains exactly as at Island, the one I happened to water during my last visit. There was a brief pause on the other end of the line, and then a note of understanding in his voice. Certainly, ma'am. We will leave everything completely undisturbed. By tomorrow night, the plant would be dead, its leaves brown and withered, a stark, visual testament to the lethality of cyanide. It would be evidence that not even Clara could deny. I spent the rest of the evening composing a letter, choosing each word with the same precision I had used to build my company. It was simple, direct, and utterly devastating. Clara and Liam, I know about the cyanide. The security guard, Frank Riley, witnessed your attempt to poison me. The toxicology report from Petrova Forensics confirms attempted murder. My will has been officially changed. You are no longer my heirs. The $43 million will now be used to fund medical research, rather than to finance your comfortable lives. You chose greed over family. Now, you have neither. Eleanor, I sealed the envelope with wax, an old-fashioned touch of finality that seemed to match the gravity of its contents. Tomorrow night, I would return to the scene of their crime to perform the final act of this tragic family drama. I would not be a victim. I would be a judge, delivering their sentence. Justice would be served at the very same table where my betrayal had been so coldly plotted. The irony felt sickeningly appropriate. The Bella Vista restaurant felt different on Thursday evening, charged with the electric tension of imminent justice. I arrived at precisely 8 o'clock, the sealed envelope tucked inside my jacket like a concealed weapon. Antonio himself escorted me to the familiar table on the terrace, the exact spot where my daughter had conspired to murder me just 3 nights before. Your guests have not yet arrived, Miss Vance. They'll be here, I said. I sat down facing the entrance, placing the envelope deliberately on the table next to my water glass. The decorative fern in the pot nearby was now a brittle brown husk, its leaves curled and lifeless from the poisoned iced tea it had been fed on Tuesday. It was the perfect, silent witness. Clara and Liam arrived 10 minutes later, their faces wearing the faint, smug satisfaction of people who believe they have gotten away with the perfect crime. Liam was wearing a black suit that seemed like a premature gesture of mourning. Mom, you look wonderful, Clara said, a flicker of genuine surprise crossing her face. Better than you expected, you mean? I replied coolly. They settled into their chairs, and Liam smoothed his trousers with hands that had helped plan my demise. The evening breeze carried the faint, sweet scent of dying flowers and shattered trust. How are you feeling? Clara's voice was dripping with false concern. Liam and I were so worried about your sudden illness. I gestured towards the withered plant. It's interesting what a little poison can do to a living thing. Isn't it? Both of their gazes followed my gesture, landing on the brown, twisted corpse of what had been a healthy, vibrant plant just 3 days ago. The color drained from Clara's face. That fern received a special watering on Tuesday night, I continued, my voice conversational. Iced tea, mixed with a little potassium cyanide, the same recipe you intended for me. Liam gripped his napkin, his knuckles turning white against the starched linen. I lifted the envelope, holding it between my fingers like a court document. This contains everything you need to know about your failed attempt on my life. Clara's hands trembled as she took the envelope from me. Her fingers fumbled with the wax seal, finally tearing it open with a desperate, frantic urgency. I watched her face as she read, and I saw the exact moment that hope died in her eyes, and the cold, hard reality of her situation crashed down upon her. Her mouth opened and closed silently, like a fish gasping for air. What? What is this? She whispered, her voice cracking. Liam leaned over her shoulder, reading the letter that laid out the destruction of their future in cold, clinical, business-like language. Mom. Wait, Clara stammered. This was all Liam's idea. I didn't want to. My voice cut through her pathetic, desperate lies like a razor. Frank Riley saw him pour the cyanide into my drink. The toxicology report confirms attempted murder. You chose money over family. I stood up, looking down at the daughter who had tried to kill me, and the man who had orchestrated the entire plot. You wanted my $43 million. Instead, medical research will benefit from it. You wanted me dead. Instead, you are now dead to me. Clara rose halfway from her chair, her movements clumsy with panic. Please, Mom, I can explain. Goodbye, Clara. Forever. I turned and walked away from the table without a second glance, leaving them there with their shattered dreams and the undeniable evidence of their crimes. Behind me, I could hear Clara's voice rising in a desperate, pleading cry, but her words were meaningless to me now. As I reached the restaurant's entrance, Antonio appeared. Will you be returning, Miss Vance? He asked quietly. No, I replied. My business here is finished. The night air felt cleaner, purer, as I stepped out onto the sidewalk. Lincoln Park stretched out before me, full of honest shadows and straightforward darkness. There was no hidden poison, no murderous relatives, no betrayal disguised as love. There was only the beginning of a new life. A life where family meant nothing, and justice meant everything. My phone would undoubtedly ring tonight, probably many times. Clara and Liam would beg, they would threaten. They would promise me anything to try to change what was already done. I would let it ring. $43 million had bought me more than just retirement. It had bought me the truth about who my daughter really was. And it had bought me the freedom to live the rest of my life without having to pretend that blood was thicker than cyanide. The city lights twinkled like scattered diamonds as I walked home.